All right, let's get started. Thank you everyone for joining us tonight. I'm so pleased to be here with Faith Ringgold and Sharon Hayes. Faith Ringgold, for those of you who don't know her, which should be no one here, is a legendary artist and writer whose work has had an enormous influence really throughout the country and even beyond for the last, let's not count how many years. Faith is here with us today because she had a solo exhibition at the New Museum in 1998. It was titled Dancing at the Louvre, and it was a grouping of quilt paintings in a body of work known as the French Collection. And Faith's work, I should say, has really spanned so many different media, not just painting, but sculpture, printmaking, and of course, many of you as children, maybe like me, first came to know Faith through the many children's books she's done, which number 18 today, is that right? So it's a great honor to have you here, and I'm also really excited to have Sharon Hayes with us. Sharon's an artist whose solo project at the New Museum was, I think, exactly 10 years ago. And she also has a piece in Trigger, our main exhibition upstairs, which is one of my favorites in the exhibition. Sharon, in her work, has been committed to looking at correspondences between the personal and the political. And that's taken it's looked at forms of expression and speech, and also the creation of the self, or the subject. A number of her works have looked back at archives or historical political speeches and historical protests. And sometimes she's used forms of mapping these kinds of histories and testimonies in different sites and contexts. Her work, I think, has a relationship to performance. I don't know if you will maybe talk about exactly what that is. But I think both of you share a commitment to politics in your work and in different ways, and I think in some similar ways as well. So after that annoyingly long introduction, I really want to start with you, Faith, and maybe see if you could share with us some of your story and what your experience was growing up in New York City and Harlem. And also coming of age here as an artist, both studying here and starting your career here.
Well, it's a long story because it all started in 1930. It all started in 1930, so it's a long story. And in a whole different time from today. I'm really fascinated that we're talking about art without looking at images. So maybe we're going to start doing art that doesn't have any images.
Well, that's already
Visual
out there.
art, I mean. Visual art without images. How's that? Is that good?
That's an interesting challenge.
Well, I think it's new. It's my first experience. I don't know whether this will.
Yeah. Well, you
Be
grew
my
up in
last.
Harlem,
Mm-hmm.
and you
A lot
went to
of
City.
images there.
Yeah. And you went to City College.
That's right.
What year did you enter in there? It was in the
1948. I was 18.
What was the climate like at that time?
The climate was, well, it was a public school, and it was free. It can, if you can. I don't think anything's free today, is it? Well, but it was free then. And I was told from the time I was a little child that I would, when I got out of high school, I would go to college. The idea was by my family to prepare the children to go to college. That's it. That's where you're headed.
Did you know what you wanted to study when you entered?
No, it wasn't about that. It was about going to college and being educated. So I think the concept they had was to have information about life and in all subject areas practically. And probably to teach, that's what I think, because most of the people in my family were teachers. I mean, they were not able to get professional jobs in any other areas because you might realize it's massive racism. And, but they wanted all of us to be educated. That was important. My great-grandfather graduated from college, so that was heavy duty. Yeah, because can you imagine what he had to go through?
And when you entered City College, it was mostly men, or it was men only?
It was an all-boys school. I didn't know that, even though all I saw coming out of the subway across the street from my house, where I lived, right across from Subway, going up the hill, 145th Street, up the hill to Convent Avenue and down. And I asked my mother one day, where are those boys going? So she said, they're going to school. School? Yeah, college. College. And I said, what college? And she said, City College. I said, well, maybe that's where I should go. And she said, well, yeah, let's go down there and take a look. So we went down one day, and we saw all these Gothic buildings that were built many years before, but they were beautifully built, gorgeous Gothic buildings. If any of you have seen City College's buildings, because they've built so much around it, it's hard to see them almost. And so now I knew, A, that I was going to college when I graduated from high school, and that I was going to City College. So now I had it all done. Okay, so in 1948, I was 18. And I went down to the City College to register. And I was told that I could not go there because it was a boys' school. Oh my goodness. It did not occur to me, just because it was all boys coming up out of the subway, that it was a boys' school? I mean, what is that? I want to go there. And I couldn't get it. I couldn't accept it after all these years of climbing that hill and watching those boys coming out of the subway, that I couldn't go to that school because it was an all-boys school. So finally, somebody came into the office, and they saw this person who was refusing to accept this fact. And they said, well, what do you want to major in? What do you want to be? I hadn't thought about being, because women didn't work in the 30s. So it wasn't about being. It was about doing. And I had been doing art all my life. I had asthma from the time I was 2. And so therefore, the doctors, I had fabulous doctors, and they didn't want me to go to school on a regular basis because they didn't want me to catch any of the childhood diseases, like a whooping cough and so on. So I was homeschooled for kindergarten and first grade. So it wasn't, I was not staunchly going to school all the time. And I was not thinking about what I wanted to be. It was just what I wanted to do. And what do I want to do? I want to do art. Now, I don't know. So then they got it over to me. I said, well, I want. So they said, well, you cannot, I want to get a liberal arts degree in art, I guess. Yes, art. I said, you can't do that because this is an all-boys school. That's hard to understand and accept. But, so then somebody said, well, no, look, well, She can do it. Here's what she has to do. She can't get a liberal arts degree, no. But she can get a Bachelor of Science in Art Education, because we do give degrees to girls in education. Is that interesting? So I said, oh my God, that's good, I'll take that. My family will love it because, there's a lot of them that are teachers, so that's good. Yeah, we'll do that. You can major in art and minor in education.
Well, when we were talking the other day, you were saying that, somehow that was also a good thing because you did a lot of teaching. I think you've taught almost every age of student that exists.
And I wouldn't have known that much about children being so wonderful as artists if I hadn't been a teacher. I probably may not have had that information. But I have taught children of every age, although I got a degree in art education for high school students. I had a hard time getting a job, though, in high school in 1950, whatever it was, when I graduated. That was not easy, but I kept going, and I did land there. But I'm also kind of glad about that because I learned about the little kids. I have taught on art to children in every age level, and the little ones are the best. And I wouldn't have known that if I hadn't taught them. They're brilliant artists. Wonderful, wonderful. And I got an opportunity to find that out by teaching them. And I had not been that interested in doing that before that graduate, having that experience at the City College.
And at the same time, you were also still painting on your own. You were making work and trying to get it shown in galleries. I wonder if you could tell us a bit about that.
Well, I've been doing art all my life because, like I said, I was home a lot, getting homeschooled, and my mother would bring me the art materials, and my father brought me my first easel, and so I had the opportunity and the space and time and everything to do art, which is what kids need. All children need that, unless they declare they're not interested, and I don't know who those kids are.
Was it harder to find that time when you were teaching and when you were a mother? And how were you making time for art those days?
Oh, I just do it. It wasn't. Life is not pretty much like it is now. There's no TV, huh? So, no, none of that. So you could find a time and a place and an opportunity to do your art very easily, right straight through the years. I never had any problem with that, no.
And what about, when you kind of had this turning point in your work where you went from from working in more traditional genres like landscape or portraiture or still life to really tackling more urgent subjects that were inspired by current events, by your thinking about inequalities in the world, about racism. I wonder if you could tell us how that transformation took place, or how you first, I know politics was always present for you, but how did it first kind of enter into your painting and your work?
Well, being an artist automatically is very difficult to do. But it's wonderful so that you face the difficulty of it and love it still. I had a hard time, without a doubt. But I was determined, and I think
Do you mean hard time making the work, or finding
I never had a hard time making the work, no.
finding the audience?
I had a hard time getting the work seen. That's what you have to do. You have to get that work seen so that you can be a part of the art world. People have to get to see it. And that is exceedingly difficult, especially in America when you are a woman. And I think being a woman is number one. And then being a black woman is hell on fire. Sorry. Very, very difficult. And I approached it because I think that being an artist is about your self. It's about you, who you are. You cannot create art about others. You are not others. You are you. And that is what is so wonderful about visual art. All over the world, wherever you go, the people there are showing you who they are. Unless they're afraid to do it or have been told they shouldn't do it and they're listening. I guess, well, at City College, I never learned anything about African art or African American art. Nothing, nothing, nothing. However, I got a fantastic art education. I got a fantastic education, period. Majored in art and minored in art education. And beautifully done, except they did not teach me anything about African art or African American art. That I did on my own. And you can do that. You can travel around the world and see the art of every group of people. Of course, it'd be better if you didn't have to do that, but I did it. I had to do it, and I did it. And that was not well accepted for many years. I don't even know about now, but I'm kind of determined, you know what I mean? And there's nothing more powerful and wonderful about artists, visual artists, defining who they are. That's, as you travel around the world, you notice the art, the visual aspect of their art just changes in such a way that's recognizable and wonderful. And the people who are it, the ethnicity of it, are the ones who can do it. Gives you a sense of power, I think, to be able to define who and what you are.
Can I?
I love that aspect of being an artist. I don't have to ask anybody's permission. I can do it. Now I can do it, but I can also get not to show it. But if you are determined enough, I think you get it over.
I want to bring a question to Sharon, which is kind of following up on what you were saying about how you had this moment where you realized that art really needed to come from you, that you had to be telling your own story somehow. And Sharon, I know that there's some part of your story in your work, and maybe it's more visible in some of your earlier pieces. And I wonder if you could speak a little bit to how you identify yourself in your work, to what extent you kind of limit you bringing your own biography into your work, or to what extent it's kind of essential and hard to really untangle.
Okay, first I have to say that it's an incredible privilege to be in the full set of 2 days, but an unbelievable privilege to be to share this stage with you, Faith, who I think of as one of the most influential and powerful artists of the 20th and 21st century.
Wow,
so
thank you.
it's incredible.
Thank you.
I think it's interesting. I've been going to a few of these, and this question of biography, Natalie had it sort of thrown back at her even earlier today. And I started thinking about it, and very often I'll say I'm from Baltimore, or I'll say, or I'll sort of fast forward to when I came to New York, which was in 1991, and that's where I define my generational specificity when I arrived in New York in the middle of the AIDS crisis, having come out as an artist and a feminist and a queer person, a lesbian, which I think of as a gender and a sexuality in a certain sense. And but in a way, I think going through the process of listening and thinking about being up here on stage to sort of answer this question, I was thinking, well, what about being born in Baltimore? And where was I born in Baltimore? In fact, I was born in Baltimore County, which is the suburbs that surrounds the city, and we call it the county in some ways. And I think that time period between sort of for the first 18 years of my life has been more impactful and demands a kind of interrogation. And I guess there's two things I was thinking about with that I think do come into my work. One is I didn't become a feminist, an artist, or a lesbian in Baltimore, in the county. And I think there's something interesting for me now to reflect on what that moment was like living in the suburbs, at a place that is often considered sort of acultural, and to start to grapple with and recognize its culture. And that culture was coalescing, it was segregating, coalescing, and protecting whiteness in part, in large part, and the connections that whiteness had and was claiming to privilege, to economic privilege, to privilege of housing, to privilege of education. And I think there was something that happened to me when I was a teenager. I had a mentor who invited a few of us over to her house, and we had dinner with her and her quote-unquote roommate. And her kids were there, and the roommate, and we had dinner, and my mentor took us on a tour of the house. And I remember it was a small house. I remember going up a set of stairs, looking at maybe 2 bedrooms. One was the kids and one was theirs. And it's embarrassing now, but I looked at the queen size bed and I thought, where's the other bed? And it was only 3 years later that I was like, And I think that there's something interesting, I guess, about what I'm recognizing through these even series of questions that have been posed around hidden in plain sight, which is to say, I didn't have the language to understand that. So it was being shown to me, but I couldn't read it. I couldn't hold it. And I think that much of what my suburban upbringing was doing without, my parents were very kind and loving, but I think there was a complicity towards hiding a lot of things, hiding why it was easy for our families to get houses in that area and not for others, hiding where our families, where that privilege came from, where that money came from, what it traces back to and what it was riding on. So I think maybe this is a long way of saying I think that in my work, every part of the foundation of who I am, like that's sort of the ground from which I make work. And whether I'm explicitly including my own self as a performer in my work, whether I'm channeling some sort of narrative that comes out of my biography but is enclosed and intersects with other narratives, or whether I'm citing a biography or a kind of narrative that is not my own, I think that that foundational that foundational ground is there, and for me it's really important to continually sort of interrogate it. And so I think in a way what I have always understood to be this real holding of history and what history is actually maybe more sort of motivated from that experience of growing up in the county than where I have cited it in other times. In 1991 when I came to New York, or a kind of grappling with, well, what was the 70s, even though I was a kid, and how do I sort of understand those histories?
I mean, it's interesting, just in a general sense, because we're always sort of we're always storytellers of our own selves, you know, and we're always kind of recreating our narrative or redefining it in different contexts. But you can't really ever cut out parts of it without.
But I guess maybe I'm not also being clear. I think there's also something about that kind of coalescing and protecting that I think happened in a lot of white families that was also about willful hiding, like a willful, that we think of and often I think have to grapple with all sorts of historical erasures. But we also, I think there's a need to dig into the specificity of that willful sort of cutting off, because the county, you know, is all about like, well, this is how community, this is like what this notion of community is formulated on. So it's not only about not being able to excise a part of me, but actually having to like figure out, where am I? Like, where did this fiction come from? This isn't, I mean, it's my experience, but it's also held inside of, I was held inside of a huge fiction, that this was just how people lived, that it wasn't sort of built on these other, inequalities and injustices and violences.
It'd be nice if a lot of other people had that kind of awakening.
Well, I guess maybe that's some of it. I have not so long ago moved from New York to Philadelphia, and I grew up in the county outside of Baltimore. And so when we were first contemplating moving to Philly, I was like, okay, no problem. I spent my adult life in New York, my childhood in Baltimore. I got this. And I don't. Philly's like really complicated and really complex relations, historic relations that you feel as you walk about the city, and certainly in the last election, thinking about what is the role of the suburbs, you know. You kind of can't ignore it.
Faith, you could probably speak to this too. You've moved to the suburbs. I mean, do you call Inglewood the suburbs? I don't know.
Oh, that's now. I'm a city girl. I was born. Oh, I keep trying to talk without this thing. I was born and raised in the city, New York City, Harlem. So we moved to Inglewood in 1993, something like that. And everything is different. It's not the same. But it doesn't matter, because I'm not influenced by my community. I don't have anything to do with my neighbors. I don't. I'm not involved with them at this point in my life. Now, when I was a kid, yes, but not now. Doesn't matter, neighbors. Doesn't make any difference to me that they don't want me there. It's ridiculous. And I don't. It's kind of good in a way, because you don't have to worry about anybody knocking on your door, getting some coffee, or trying to give you a problem or anything. They don't even say hello to me. Just pass on like you don't see me. You know, it's okay. It's fine. I wouldn't have wanted to grow up like that, no. But now it's okay. No big thing to me at all. But what I wanted to say about the art world is that my beginning problems in the art world, I thought, were black and white. And so I was involved in trying to get the major institutions to accept black artists, until I realized that even when they accept, they're not accepting black women. So we were opening up doors for black artists in museums, but when the door opened, only the guys went in. And we were still outside. I said, no, wait a minute, something's wrong with this. I think I'm spending too much time on the wrong side. So that's when I designed my first, my first, what do you call it? Oh my God.
You're on protest, or?
Yeah, against a museum for women, okay? And that was interesting to do because it was the beginning of the feminist movement, and I became a part of it, and it did a major demonstration at the Whitney Museum in New York. And I've been understanding ever since that I'm a woman, and my concerns for what happens to women is first. That's because that's what I am. It's only natural. It makes sense. And so that's what I do. That's how I became a feminist, understanding that I am a woman and that I have problems and that I have to deal with those first. And then after, everybody else comes in. That's extremely important. And I did that in the art world, and I am very happy that I have, because the longer you do the wrong thing, when you look back, the worse you feel about it. So I think that I'm glad that I was involved in the early, 70s, yes.
Can I ask you a question about that? Those actions too, do you feel like they opened up for you a different way of making art?
Oh,
as well?
absolutely. Yes, they made me understand, to put myself in the center and to understand that I am important. I am the person to evaluate me and to express my life, and that I can provide leadership to younger people, and that it's absolutely important that I do that, because if not me, who? And if not now, when?
There's also something I've always appreciated in your work about that it is like, it's a storytelling, but a history telling, like, so that your work is providing a kind of text in a way, like it's visual and it's operating through a whole bunch of aesthetics, but it's also offering a kind of way for people to read history, to read politics, to read power and resistance.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for me, there's something really interesting then in your works also where you're you're kind of redistributing other people's texts too, like Baraka, and allowing this to be read. And
a lot of these people have been so wonderful. In fact, Amiri Baraka wrote the first review of a show of mine. And I mean, to say that somebody was going to write a review of my show, boy, and he just came right in, and he's such a brilliant, and is such a brilliant writer. And he wrote this review. It just thrilled me to death. But there have been others, many, many others too. But this is important. It's needed. It's other people. You need to realize that you have a responsibility as an artist to share your ethnicity with others and to be who you are. Because as you travel around the world, you will see the imagery, of course, the music, the dance, the theater, all of that, change depending upon where you are, where you're in Asia, Europe, you're in Africa. Where are you? The people there are showing you their lives, how life is affecting them. Even though many, it's just abstractions of one kind, like in China and Japan. what you're looking at is something that's so deep and so intrinsic to the people who have made it that it's a mystery that no one can solve. You know right away when you're looking at it, at Chinese art, Japanese, European, German, French, Italian, African. You know when you're looking at that. You are looking at something different that is common to the people who are doing it. And it's, where does it come from? Why does it look like that? You know, there's no answer to that except that it's the ethnicity of the people. It's like the dance, the music, the literature has its common root in the lives of the people who do it. Although nobody's making you, nobody's telling you you got to do it this way, that way. It just comes out of you, provided you have not stopped it. Because some artists do, right?
Faith, I want to ask you, I know we're kind of nearing the end of our time, but we didn't yet get to talk about the People's Flag show.
Uh-oh.
And this was a kind of formative, maybe formative experience for you that also resulted in you being arrested. And this was 1970. It was a show organized in protest of the criminalization of the defamation of the American flag. So it was a number of artists, maybe throughout the New York City, in a show downtown, and it was a lot of works with the flag. And the flag then kind of became a motif that you took up in other works. Mm-hmm. But I wonder if you could just tell us a little bit about this experience and why it was important for you to be involved in that show.
Well, I think it was the Art Workers Coalition that put that show together, and I was a part of the Art Workers Coalition I think that show happened in 1970 at the Judson Church in New York. And the idea was to free the flag from any kind of limitation. Children were getting, arrested actually, for putting flags on their jeans, for just doing anything with the flag, burning the flag, that was definitely criminal. And we had decided that we were going to have a flag show to protest this and to give the freedom of all artists to do. The flag is a work of art. It's a visual expression of America, and it's about freedom of expression. And no one has a right to decide that doing something to it as an expression of what's wrong in America is criminal. And we got together to make this show. We did it. And toward the end of it, in fact, the last day of the show at the Judson Church, 3 people arrived. They looked a little different. They didn't look like people who were coming to, a flag show. But they didn't say they were anything but visitors to the show. So I was downstairs because I was about to leave to go home. And when they came in, and so I let them in, and they went upstairs to the gallery. And I'm waiting for my daughter to come downstairs, Michelle, when one of the artists comes downstairs and says, look, Michelle just got arrested. And I said, what? Michelle was what? 17, 16, I can't remember. It was 1970. She was born in 1952. And I said, arrested for what? And they said, well, and who arrested her? There's no police up there. They said, yes, there are. There are 4. And they said, you better go up there and get her because, no, this person said, you better get out of here because Michelle just got arrested. Can you imagine? I can't remember who that was that thought that I'm going to go and leave my daughter under arrest so that I don't get arrested. She didn't start the show anyway. She didn't organize that show. I did. Me and John Hendricks and Jean Tosh, not Michelle. She was a kid. She had nothing to do with it. And so I'm going to leave her. That was crazy. Okay. So I ran up there, and I knew that it was an illegal arrest for the simple reason that police, when they are asking you questions, they have to let you know that they are police and that you might get arrested for your answer. That is legal. That's the way it has to be. If they don't, then the arrest is not legal. So I knew that it was these people who had come in the door that looked a little strange to me, but didn't say they were cops. And so I knew that whoever was arrested up there, it's going to depend on how they did it. So I went upstairs and I came into the gallery, and mind you, everybody was in that show. And then when I say everybody, I mean all the important artists of that time, name them, were in that show. Because they knew, and gallery dealers gave us tons of money, because you can't have art if there's restrictions on what it can be. Without freedom of speech, there's no art. None. And so galleries dealers understand that. That's why I was wondering what Trump was going to do with the flag, because that doesn't work. That does not, it didn't work back in 1970, and it wouldn't work today. Freedom of speech is what America is founded on. You've got to have that. So I walked into the gallery, and everybody's standing quiet. And I said, okay, come on, Michelle, let's go. We got to get home. It's time to leave. And they said, oh, no, she can't go. And Michelle said, no, I said, why can't you go? I played ignorant. Why can't you go? Because I'm under arrest. What? What? Under arrest for what? For making this show. I said, you didn't organize this show. I did. And they said, well, you're under arrest. I said, well, I don't know. And then I looked, and there was John and Jean, and they were standing up there, acting like 2 arrested guys. Now,
I have to say, there's a photo of the 3 of you
really?
That's been reproduced a number of times.
Yes.
And in it, the 2 of them look a little bit disgruntled.
Yeah.
And you got a grin on your face.
But no, you don't realize they felt in the 1970s getting arrested for something like that was triumphant. It was important. I mean, they were, I shouldn't say they're happy, but they felt like we could handle this. And we did.
You did.
And anyway, so they said, you're under arrest. And so now what am I going to do? Okay, I guess I'm under arrest. So I gave Michelle my rings and everything for her to go home, because I don't want my daughter getting arrested for nothing, especially not something she didn't do, okay? So we go downstairs, and we get into, they sent a special car for me with a woman driving. No, I never had, no brutality, none. I cannot say anybody did anything bad to me. I rode with one woman, and John and Jean rode with this guy in his car. No brutality, none. However, when we got to the, what do you call that prison down there? What? When we got down to the Tombs, was it? I can't remember exactly where we got put in. The prison, we were supposed to go to court because we had a lot of lawyers defending us, okay? We were not out there looking for somebody to defend us. We had the ACLU and the NACP. A lot of people were defending us. They were not going to get away easy with us. And a lot of people had contributed money. All the big galleries had contributed money. Incidentally, we had to sneak into the Tombs. That's where it was. We had to sneak into the Tombs because it was closed. And we had, because we had done so much talking, we're getting there late. But the Tombs was closed, and the guard who was on the door said, I can't let you in. Only thing I can let you into is the prison, but not the courtroom because it's too late. So, and you're not spending the night. If you come in now, you're going to have to go to jail. So, no.
But you managed to get out of this.
Not going to jail. We're going to court, and we're going home. However, the guy on the gate door said, okay, I'll turn my back, and you can sneak in. You gotta be kidding. We could sneak in the Tombs? Am I crazy? Why am I sneaking in the Tombs? So John and Jean said, oh, Faith, come on, let's go, let's do this. That was a period when people loved stuff like that. People, oh my God, they couldn't wait to get in. They could not wait to get in the Tombs. Now me, I am not interested in being in the Tombs, I don't care. But I had to go because they were saying, come on, Faith, come on, we gotta go, we gotta do this. Okay, so this guy actually turned his back and we sneaked in the Tombs. Is that crazy? Okay, we got in the Tombs. Once we got in there, of course, we were separated. The men, the women, me, and then John and Jean. So that's quick, that happens. Okay, they took John and Jean and put them in a cage with a lot of guys that, I don't know what those guys had done, but they were messed up. And John and Jean were in there with those guys, and they were so proud to be in there. That was a crazy time we were living in, you know? John and Jean were so happy. They felt like they were doing something for America by, you know, sacrificing their freedom in this way. Of course, it wasn't going to last long. And they didn't put me in a cage. The women officers walked me through to where the courtroom was. And all the women that were in the cages were yelling out at me, hey, what are you doing in here? Where are you going? What's she in here for? Because I didn't look like them, I wasn't dressed like them. You know what I mean? What the hell are you doing in here? And it was very interesting. Okay, we got into the courtroom, and in there we had we may have had about 10 lawyers in there. I mean, we were well protected. And of course, we got out of there without spending any time. But that's because that guard had let us sneak in, because it was too late to go to meet your lawyer. Is that fantastic? Yeah. But we did that. We all the money that we had, thousands of dollars had been contributed to our case, and we didn't need it because we got brought home. I mean, we didn't even spend a night there. That money we turned over to the children all over the country who were getting arrested for having flags on their jeans. I mean, it was a very, very crazy time. I hope we never, ever see anything like that again. And that was at the Judson Church. We had that show, and we got out immediately. And I haven't heard very much about flag since then.
Well, it's a fascinating story because, as you said, that time was. I hope it's something that we don't return to.
Oh, crazy.
But thank you so much for sharing that, and thank you both for being with us today. It's, as I said before, it's such a huge honor to have you here, and we're incredibly grateful.
Thank you. Thank you very much.